The morning air at Dam Neck carried saltbite, the Atlantic wind pushing mist across the sprawling range. At first glance it was just another training day for SEAL Team 3. Targets clicked into motion downrange. Brass clinked against concrete as operators fired and reloaded in a rhythm that was almost musical. Every man out there had earned his place through sweat, grit, and the kind of stubbornness that keeps you alive when the odds are against you. And then Maya Williams walked in. She wasn't supposed to stand out. She carried herself with the calm economy of someone used to being overlooked. Her uniform was standard issue, her boots worn from field use, her duffel plain and functional. But it wasn't the gear that drew the looks, it was her presence. She wasn't nervous, not exactly. She was too steady for that. But in a space dominated by muscle, swagger, and the constant hum of testosterone, she was an anomaly. Commander Morrison didn't like anomalies. "You think you know where you are, rookie?" His voice cracked like thunder across the firing line. Even the crack of rifles paused for a beat. He didn't need to raise his volume much. Contempt carried it further than sound. This is SEAL Team 3's facility, not some weekend shooting club. Every operator on the range froze mid-drill. Heads turned. Shoulders stiffened. 24 men, all waiting for the show. Maya didn't flinch. Her Remington 700 rested against her shoulder, hazel eyes steady on Morrison as he stalked toward her. The man moved like he owned the dirt under his boots, every step broadcasting authority that had gone unchecked for years. Morrison snatched the rifle from her grip, harder than he needed to. His laugh was sharp, grating. 12 moving targets. 5 minutes. Winds at 47 knots. Team records 8 minutes, 43 seconds. Think you can handle that, princess? Or are you just here to look pretty? He tossed the rifle back at her with deliberate carelessness. The steel should have smacked against the ground, but Maya caught it clean, movement smooth, practiced, effortless. The kind of catch you didn't think about, because your body had repeated it thousands of times. "I'll try, sir," she said quietly. Her voice barely carried above the coastal wind. From his post near the ammo station, Master Chief Rodriguez exhaled sharply. He'd been watching her since she stepped onto the range, and something about the way she checked the rifle made his skin prickle. The technique wasn't standard issue anymore. It was older, refined, the kind of ritual only 1 or 2 shooters had ever used. He'd seen it once before in Afghanistan, in a valley where men had died faster than names could be recorded. Rodriguez shook the thought away. But it lingered, like a ghost refusing to leave. Morrison barked at the team to gather. The operators formed a loose half-circle, eyes sharp with the anticipation of blood sport. Maya stood alone in the center of it, rifle in hand. The outsider dropped into their sacred fraternity. 3 days. That was how long she'd been attached to them. Long enough for Morrison to make his contempt clear, not long enough for anyone else to form an opinion beyond his lead. Rodriguez saw the way they looked at her now, some amused, some hostile, a few curious. No one neutral. He thought back to the day she arrived. 0600 sharp, Maya had stepped through the gate with her orders folded crisp and a worn bag over her shoulder. The guard had blinked at her papers, double-checking the assignment. Women weren't unusual in support billets, intel, logistics, medical. But a female sniper assigned to an operational SEAL team? That was unheard of. She'd walked into the team room, where Morrison held court like a king among warriors. The man's frame filled the space, his voice commanding, his confidence unshakable. Until Maya knocked and entered. Then the air had shifted, professional focus giving way to snickering hostility. "Gentlemen," Morrison had announced, sarcasm dripping like venom. "Meet our new sniper support specialist. Apparently, someone at SOCOM thinks we need diversity more than combat effectiveness." The laughter that followed had been cruel, cutting, designed to wound. Maya hadn't reacted. She'd simply chosen a chair in the back, hands folded, face neutral. Rodriguez had noticed the faint color rising in her cheeks, but not a flicker in her eyes. She'd learned long ago not to give bullies what they wanted. That first briefing ended with Morrison assigning her to the farthest shooting position on the range. "Don't want you getting in the way of real operators. He'd said loud enough for the whole team to hear. Maybe you can practice your breathing exercises or whatever they taught you in your air-conditioned schoolhouse. And yet here she was now, standing in the ring Morrison had built for her humiliation. Rodriguez caught it again, the way her fingers traced the serial number on the rifle, almost tenderly. Memory clawed at him. Another shooter, another lifetime. The details were slippery, but the feeling was the same. The range stretched for over 2,000 meters. Wind clawed across it, hard enough to throw shots wide at even moderate distances. Morrison had designed this next course to be impossible. But impossible was exactly what would prove him right or wrong. Maya shouldered the rifle with an economy of movement that drew silence from the crowd. She didn't fumble. She didn't hesitate. She just slid into the firing position, as if she'd been doing it her whole life. "Clock starts when you fire," Morrison said. His smirk was a blade. "Try not to embarrass yourself." Rodriguez couldn't shake the growing weight in his chest. He didn't know exactly who Maya Williams was yet, but he was certain of one thing. Morrison had picked the wrong woman to underestimate. The day had started with routine drills, the kind designed to grind muscle memory into bone. SEAL Team 3 was scattered across the range, running their stations with the focus of men who had done this 1,000 times. Steel targets rang, rifles cracked, spotters called corrections. It was the language of their world. Precision under pressure. For Maya, it was something else entirely. It was a test. She'd been shoved to the far edge of the range, her position deliberately isolated. Morrison's doing, of course. He didn't want her among the others. He wanted her where everyone could see her fail. Her ammunition had been handed to her late, her gear double-checked with a suspicious eye, her scope quietly tampered with. Subtle sabotage, just enough to tilt the scales. Maya didn't complain. She simply set her kit down, opened her small notebook, and began writing figures with the calm precision of someone solving a math problem. Wind direction, humidity, temperature all scribbled in neat columns. Rodriguez watched from a distance, arms folded, pretending to inventory ammo. His eyes tracked every movement she made, the way she aligned her rifle, the methodical sequence of her checks. She wasn't just shooting. She was preparing like a craftsman about to put a chisel to stone. He'd seen plenty of good shooters. He'd even seen great ones. But this was different. Morrison circled her like a wolf sniffing for weakness. "How's that scope treating you?" he asked loudly enough for others to hear. "Or do you need me to set it for you? Wouldn't want you confusing the trigger with the safety." A couple of chuckles floated from the crowd. Maya didn't look up. She adjusted the elevation knob a hair's breadth, checked her breathing, and fired. The shot snapped downrange, crisp and unhurried. The target swung back immediately. The center punched clean. She cycled the bolt and sent another round. Same result. Rodriguez saw Morrison's jaw tighten. He knew what Maya had done. The scope wasn't zeroed properly, but she had read the rifle, made the mental corrections, and compensated without so much as a curse under her breath. "Beginner's luck," Morrison said flatly. But it wasn't luck. The next 8 rounds cut a group, so tight it could have been one ragged hole. Maya rose from the rifle like nothing unusual had happened. The men exchanged glances. They weren't smiling anymore. Morrison wasn't done. "Fine shooting. But let's see how you handle real pressure." He barked orders, calling the team together for a demonstration. The operators formed a loose circle, curiosity flickering in their eyes. They'd all seen newcomers tested before, but this had a different edge. Everyone knew Morrison didn't just want her to fail, he needed her to. He handed her a different weapon system, one notoriously temperamental, its balance tricky, its scope mismatched. "Targets at 600 meters, he said. "Coastal winds picking up. Show us what all that equal opportunity training bought us." Maya studied the rifle in silence. Her fingers traced the scope mounts, the stock, the worn edges on the receiver. Then she knelt, steadied herself, and took aim. The wind gusted across the range, 15 knots at least. Enough to make even seasoned shooters pause. She didn't use the wind flags. She didn't need to. Her eyes scanned the dust blowing low, the bend in the grass, the shimmer of heat rising from the dirt. She adjusted without hesitation. The shot cracked, and the target rocked backward. Dead center. She followed with 9 more. Each one punched exactly where she wanted it. This time, no one laughed. A silence spread through the circle, the kind that only comes when men who know their craft recognize skill beyond question. A few even leaned in, whispering. Rodriguez caught one of them mutter, "She's not missing. Not even close. It's like she's playing with him." Morrison scowled, but he pushed harder. Moving targets, stress drills, shots after sprints, and push-ups to shake her arms. Each time, Maya's accuracy tightened instead of faltering. Rodriguez's unease grew. The small details kept piling up. The way she cleaned the rifle afterward, careful with parts most shooters ignored. The small notebook where she scribbled calculations in a precise hand. And then, during a break, he saw it, the battered watch on her wrist. Scratched, scarred, engraved with the initials MW. He froze. That watch. That ritual touching it before every difficult shot. He'd seen it before. In Afghanistan. Michael Williams. Rodriguez's chest tightened. Michael "Ghost" Williams had been a legend among Marine snipers. And dead for over a decade. Now here was Maya, his spitting image behind a rifle. The morning wore on, each challenge more unreasonable than the last. Maya never complained. She never bragged. She simply executed with the same mechanical grace, as if her body knew what to do long before her mind had to think it. By the time Morrison called for the ultimate demonstration, the men weren't watching to see her fail anymore. They were watching to see what she would do next. The shift was subtle but undeniable. The smirks were gone. In their place was the sharp focus of professionals realizing the new arrival wasn't just competent, she was something rare. Rodriguez said nothing. He only adjusted his cap against the wind and waited, a storm of recognition and suspicion building inside him. Because if Maya Williams was who he thought she was, the rest of this day was about to change everything. By mid-morning, the range had turned into something more than training. Word had spread, and operators from neighboring sections drifted over, drawn by the drama building at the far end. Men leaned on barriers, crossed their arms, and waited. Whatever this was, it had gone beyond routine drills. Morrison's temper was boiling beneath the surface. He masked it with a smirk, but his eyes betrayed him. Every challenge he'd thrown at Maya had been crushed with cold precision. Every trap he set had been dismantled before it could spring. His confidence, once unshakable, was beginning to look brittle. That's when he announced the impossible. "Since our new specialist thinks she can shoot," he said, raising his voice for the crowd, "we'll have a little demonstration. 12 targets. Random exposure. Distances between 300 and 1,000 meters. You'll have 5 minutes. He checked his watch dramatically. Team record stands at 8 minutes, 43 seconds. The air shifted. Even the most seasoned shooters among them felt the weight of that course. It wasn't just hard, it was designed to be a nightmare. Wind gusted off the Atlantic in sharp, unpredictable bursts. Targets would appear for only 3 seconds, each moving at different speeds and patterns. No electronic assistance, no time to recalculate. You either had instinct or you didn't. Morrison's grin spread like oil. Ladies first. The men formed a loose semicircle behind the firing line. The earlier jokes had dried up. Nobody laughed now. Maya walked forward without hesitation, rifle balanced in her hands like it belonged there. Each step was measured, each motion deliberate. She knelt, then lay prone, adjusting her body until she became one with the earth. The ritual was so smooth it felt rehearsed. Rodriguez watched, heart heavy in his chest. He knew that posture. He knew the way she wet a fingertip and lifted it into the wind, the old school technique long since replaced by gadgets. And he knew the focus on her face stillness, so complete it bordered on frightening. He had seen it before in the Hindu Kush, when Michael Williams made shots no one believed were possible. 30 seconds to prepare, Morrison barked, trying to reassert control. Maya barely moved. Her breathing slowed. Her pulse seemed to vanish. She wasn't thinking about the crowd, or Morrison, or even the record. She was simply aligning herself with the shot to come. "Clock starts on your first round," Morrison said. His smirk looked a little forced now. The first target snapped into view at 750 meters, sliding left to right. Maya's rifle cracked almost instantly. The steel flipped backward before its 3-second window closed. A ripple moved through the crowd. "Lucky hit," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. The second target appeared closer, faster. Maya tracked for a heartbeat, squeezed, and dropped it just before it vanished. The bolt cycled, brass ejected, and the rifle settled back into her shoulder as if it had never moved. By the fourth target, the crowd was silent. Maya wasn't rushing. She wasn't even straining. Each shot flowed into the next, rhythm as steady as the surf rolling against the beach. Crack, bolt, acquire, crack, bolt, acquire. At 1,000 meters, the wind rose suddenly, flags snapping horizontal. Any other shooter would have paused, recalculated, waited for mercy. Maya didn't. She adjusted half an inch, read the swirl of dust at ankle level, and fired. The target spun off its post. Someone whispered behind Rodriguez, "That's not possible." But it was. It was happening right in front of them. By the ninth target, disbelief had turned to awe. Operators who'd mocked her hours ago now leaned forward, eyes wide, watching as if they were witnessing myth being written. Morrison's face told its own story. Red, then pale, then stone. His smirk was gone. His jaw worked wordlessly as he searched for something to cling to, but every shot drove the nails deeper. The 11th target fell. The 12th appeared at maximum range, weaving erratically. Maya's rifle followed it with tiny, perfect adjustments. The wind gusted again, enough to make a few men step back. She fired anyway. The bullet's flight took 2 full seconds, long enough for the target to change direction twice. And yet, when the round struck, it hit dead center. The buzzer screamed. The crowd jolted as the range safety officer raised his clipboard. His voice cracked. For minutes, 17 seconds. New course record. Silence. Not the silence of mockery or tension, but the heavy silence of respect. Maya saved her rifle, rose and turned. Her eyes were calm, not triumphant. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply stood, the embodiment of quiet confidence. Morrison looked as if the ground had opened beneath him. His authority, his dominance, his certainty, all of it had been shattered in less than 5 minutes. Rodriguez swallowed hard. The truth he had tried to ignore was now undeniable. The way she shot. The way she read the wind. The ritual with the watch. She wasn't just another recruit with a talent for marksmanship. She was Michael Williams's daughter. And if that was true, then Morrison's day of humiliation had only just begun. The echo of Maya's last shot was still rolling across the range when the silence hit. It was a silence heavy enough to crush the bravado out of every man standing there. Morrison's face had gone gray, his authority crumbling in the eyes of his team. And then the black SUV appeared. It pulled up just beyond the firing line, its tires grinding over gravel. The vehicle bore the markings of Special Operations Command. Nobody spoke. Officers at that level didn't just wander onto a training range without reason. When the door opened and a man stepped out wearing the stars of a general, the tension deepened. General Thompson. His reputation preceded him. Decorated veteran. Survivor of battles that men whispered about over beers, a commander whose voice carried more weight than any written order. He strode forward with the kind of presence that came only from decades of leadership. The crowd straightened unconsciously, every man snapping to a posture that hovered between respect and anxiety. Thompson's eyes found Maya immediately. He didn't look at Morrison, didn't acknowledge the team, didn't scan the range. He walked straight toward her. "Sergeant Williams," he said quietly, though the words carried across the space. The use of her rank sent a visible ripple through the crowd. Morrison blinked, confusion flashing across his face. "Sir, with respect, this is our assigned support specialist." She was just. Thompson cut him off with a raised hand. I know exactly who she is. His gaze never left Maya. I should have recognized that shooting style the moment I arrived. You're the spitting image of your father. The air shifted again, sharper this time. Men exchanged glances, brows furrowing, trying to connect the dots. Rodriguez already knew. He'd known in his gut long before this moment. Still, hearing the words spoken aloud sent a weight pressing against his chest. Morrison tried to rally, his voice cracking. "Sir, with respect." "Respect?" Thompson snapped, his voice suddenly steel. "You've spent the morning hazing the daughter of Master Gunnery Sergeant Michael Ghost Williams, the man who saved 8 of your fellow SEALs during Operation Mountain Storm." The name hit the crowd like a detonation. Michael Williams, the legend. The Marine sniper whose impossible stand in Afghanistan had been etched into the history of special operations. Rodriguez stepped forward, his throat tight. "General, I was one of those 8, he said, his voice thick. "Michael saved my life that day. Saved all of our lives." He turned toward Maya, really seeing her now, not as the quiet outsider, but as the link to a man he'd thought about every day for 13 years. "I tried to find you after the funeral," he said. "Your mother was gone, and you'd disappeared into the system. Michael made me promise to look after you if anything happened. And I failed." Maya's composure cracked for the first time. Her voice shook as she spoke, tears brimming. "You didn't fail, Master Chief. I didn't want to be found. I was angry at Dad for dying, at the military for taking him, at the world for moving on like he never existed. I spent years in foster care, learning to disappear." The men stood in stunned silence, the weight of her words heavy as stone. For them, legends were always stories. Here, suddenly, was the living continuation of one. Morrison staggered a step back, his eyes wide. He looked like a man watching the ground vanish beneath him. 8 SEALs, he whispered. "One of them was my brother, Danny Morrison, Team 4. Maya turned her gaze on him, her hazel eyes sharp, unwavering. "Petty Officer 2nd Class Daniel Morrison," she said softly. "Married to Jennifer. 2 kids. My dad wrote about all of you in his letters. Said Danny talked about his older brother all the time. How you were his hero." The commander's legs buckled. He dropped to his knees in the dirt, tears cutting paths down his face. "I've spent 13 years hating myself for not being there. Danny was supposed to be on a routine patrol. I should have been with him. When I heard a Marine sniper save them, I never imagined it was your father. And I've been treating you like garbage, the daughter of the man who gave my brother back to his family." Maya moved toward him and knelt. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady but gentle. "My father would say you were protecting your team the only way you knew how. He'd respect that, even if your methods were wrong." Morrison's tears fell freely. "I don't deserve forgiveness." Maya's voice was quiet, but firm. "The brotherhood isn't about being perfect. It's about learning. About respect. You didn't know who I was. But more importantly, I haven't earned your respect yet. Not by my name. Only by my actions." Rodriguez cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the circle of men. Her actions today were convincing enough. "I've only seen shooting like that once before. Your father, Maya. Sandstorm in Kandahar. Targets the rest of us couldn't even see. You've got his gift." The general spoke again, his tone softer now, but no less commanding. "Your instructors at Quantico sent me your scores, Sergeant. You didn't just pass sniper school, you shattered records that had stood for decades. Some set by your father himself." He turned to the men assembled. "What you witnessed today wasn't just exceptional marksmanship. It was the continuation of a legacy. Michael Williams didn't just save 8 men that day. He saved 8 families, their children, their grandchildren. His sacrifice rippled outward through hundreds of lives." The crowd stood still, humbled. Even those who had laughed earlier now held their heads low, confronted with the truth of what they had seen. Morrison rose unsteadily to his feet, his face streaked with shame. "Sergeant Williams," he said, voice raw, "you've proven yourself beyond doubt. If you'll allow it, SEAL Team 3 would be honored to have you as our lead sniper. Gasps flickered across the group. Morrison, who had mocked her relentlessly, was now offering her the very respect he had sworn she didn't deserve. General Thompson nodded slightly, as if to seal the moment. "Or there's another path," he said. "We're building a new training cadre at DevGru Advanced Marksmanship Instructors. Men and women who can not only shoot at the highest level but teach it. Your father was one of the greatest instructors the Corps ever had. You've inherited that gift." All eyes turned to Maya. She stood at the crossroads of two futures, one on the battlefield, one in the classroom. Maybe both. She touched the scratched watch on her wrist, feeling the engraving beneath her fingers. Forever watching. Her father's words. His presence. And in that moment, the outsider was gone. Maya Williams had stepped fully into her legacy. 6 months later, the story of that morning on the Virginia Beach Range had already passed into legend. In bars, in briefing rooms, whispered between operators on deployment, people retold it. The day Morrison's arrogance collided with Maya Williams' skill and lost. The details shifted with each telling. Some said 12 shots in under 4 minutes. Others claimed she hadn't missed a single target all week, but the heart of it remained. A female sniper had walked into SEAL Team 3's world as an outsider and left that range as something else entirely. But legends are only as strong as the actions that follow. Maya proved herself in ways that mattered more than stories. Within weeks, she had integrated into Team 3's sniper element, not as a token or an experiment, but as the shooter they trusted with their lives. On their first deployment together, she earned that trust under fire. The details of the mission remained buried under classification, but whispers spread of an ambush averted by shots taken in winds, so violent most men couldn't stand upright. The official record lists her as saving at least a dozen lives that night. Quietly, without ceremony, she was awarded the Silver Star. Between deployments, Maya embraced the other half of her new role, instructor. At Dam Neck, she reshaped sniper training with a blend of her father's old-school rigor and cutting-edge technology. She drilled her students not just in marksmanship, but in patience, in awareness, in the art of reading an environment like a second language. She told them what her father had told her. The best shooters aren't the ones who never miss. They're the ones who know when not to pull the trigger. Her classes filled quickly. Operators from across naval special warfare sought her instruction. Some came skeptical, unsure what they would learn from someone who looked nothing like the hardened instructors they were used to. Most left humbled, their shot groups tighter, their respect genuine. Morrison, to his credit, became her fiercest advocate. The man who had once mocked her now used his authority to break down the same barriers he'd embodied. He never pretended his past behavior hadn't happened. Instead, he acknowledged it, often bluntly, using himself as an example of how prejudice blinds even the most seasoned warrior. "I was wrong," he told his men more than once. "I was blinded by bias, and I nearly lost one of the best assets this team has ever had." On his desk, Morrison kept a single photo not of himself, not of medals, but of his brother Danny with his family. The picture reminded him every day why Maya mattered, and why her father's sacrifice could never be forgotten. At the range, a small plaque appeared one morning, bolted to a post overlooking the firing line where Maya had set the record. It read, "Excellence has no gender, no race, no background. Only skill matters here." Most visitors walked past without noticing, but those who knew the story stopped, touched the medal, and remembered. Maya herself remained quiet in the face of her growing reputation. She didn't chase recognition. She didn't correct the rumors or bask in the respect. She simply kept working, deploying, teaching, sharpening both her own skill and the skills of those around her. On quiet mornings, when the range was empty, she would sometimes return alone. The mist would hang low, gulls crying over the surf, the Atlantic wind tugging at her jacket. She would lay prone, rifle steady, and send rounds down range with the same mechanical precision she'd always had. Each shot was a meditation, each one a conversation with the ghost who had taught her. Her father's watch remained on her wrist, scratched, battered, but unbroken. She still touched it before difficult drills, still felt the weight of his presence in the ritual. Forever watching, The engraving read, and she believed it. Within the community, her impact grew. Younger women, once resigned to support billets, began to dream bigger. They saw in Maya proof that skill spoke louder than tradition. More importantly, men saw it too. For every whispered doubt, there was a counterpoint. Remember Maya Williams on the range. Remember what she did. Rodriguez watched it all unfold with quiet pride. He had kept his promise to Michael in the only way left to him, by witnessing Maya's rise, by supporting her when she needed it most. He never forgot the day she forgave Morrison, the grace she showed in the moment where others might have chosen bitterness. That, more than the shooting, convinced him she had truly inherited her father's gift. Her legacy wasn't just the record time or the Silver Star or the teaching cadre she helped build. It was in the lives saved by operators who'd absorbed her lessons. It was in the subtle but irreversible cultural shift that swept through naval special warfare. Prejudice falling away, respect rooted in performance, not perception. And it was in the simple truth that the daughter of Michael Ghost Williams had walked among them, carrying forward not just his name, but his spirit. On one of those mist-heavy mornings, Rodriguez found her at the range. She lay prone, rifle steady, eyes behind the scope. He stood silently, listening to the crack of each round, watching the steel targets fall in rhythm. When she finally lowered the rifle, he spoke. Your father would be proud, not just of your shooting. That was never the heart of it. He'd be proud of the way you carried yourself. The patience, the forgiveness. That's what made him special. Maya touched the watch, smiled faintly. He taught me that the rifle is only as strong as the person behind it. Shooting wasn't about targets for him. It was about discipline, about choosing wisely when to act and when to wait. That's what I've tried to carry forward. Rodriguez nodded. Mission accomplished, Sergeant. Welcome to the teams. She looked out over the range, mist curling around the targets. She wasn't the outsider anymore. She wasn't the anomaly. She was SEAL Team 3's sniper, their teacher, their example. And with every shot she fired, the echo of her father's legacy lived on.